What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a Kyle Butt video where he tries to make an argument against the fact that atheists just believe in one God less than most religious people. Here, let's see what he's got.
When Thomas Edison was inventing the light bulb, the story is told that he said that after trying 10,000 different filaments, he hadn't failed, he just found 10,000 things that didn't work in a light bulb. Now, suppose a person were to say, tell me why those 10,000 filaments didn't work, and I'll use the same reasoning to tell you why the one thing you say works won't. I just believe in one less filament than you.
That's a really stupid argument against the whole I believe in one God less than you. For one thing, the I believe in one God less than you do isn't a positive argument or really an argument at all against anything other than the fact that religious people and atheists are really no different other than we just believe in one God less than you do. Essentially, that's all that's meant to demonstrate. It's not meant to argue against anything. But to try to compare it to something that we can empirically show is either an answer or not an answer is rather ridiculous. And I'll get more into why it is ridiculous. But hey, if you want to see how dumb Butt gets, then please stay tuned. Alright, heathens, well, before we get into today's video, I do want to give a really big shout out to Uhan Roderick. Uhan helped me out while I was sick with COVID, while we were sick with COVID. He helped us out a lot here, both in the house and on the channel. So I just really want to give a big shout out and say thank you so much, Uhan Roderick, for helping us out over here. Also, before we get into the video, whenever somebody says, oh, I just believe in one God less than you do, it's meant more of a demonstration of the differences between our worldviews as far as belief in a supernatural deity. Both of us don't believe in all of the other definitions of God. We just, atheists, just so happen to go one God further, and we don't believe in your specific definition of God. It's really the only difference. It's not meant as a positive argument or anything like that. It's just meant as a demonstration of how not different we actually are. Kyle Butt in this video, though, is going to take that demonstration and try to turn it into some kind of argument. He's going to convolute the uses of I believe in one God less in order to confuse the conversation. So let's get into this Butt's video.
Do a quick search of YouTube for best atheistic arguments. And you'll get several videos that include popular atheists saying this in a nutshell. Well, I just believe in one less God than you do. What do they mean by that? Well, they rattle off a list of gods such as Zeus, Poseidon, Vishnu, Buddha, Horus, Apollo, and then they say something to the effect of, tell me why you don't believe in those gods, and I will use your very same reasons to tell you why I don't believe in your God.
So this kind of goes a little bit further into the I believe in one like God less than you in an effort to try to explain why I believe in one God less than you do. Because all of those other gods that you listed there, Zeus, Vishnu, Buddha, all them, they all have a reason. Like everybody that believes in those gods has a reason why they believe in those gods. But they also have the exact same reasons why they don't believe in other gods. And you're no special case in this situation, Kyle Butt. The reasons why you don't believe in those gods are the same reasons why those people that believe in those gods don't believe in your God. So I'm having a really tough time trying to find the difference between your God and these other gods and the reasons why you believe in your God and not these other gods. Because it all seems like the exact same spiel every time you ask somebody with a different God. That's the purpose in bringing up the long list of gods. Another reason why to bring that up would be to point out how illogical it would be to think that your God is special unless you have good empirical evidence to suggest that your God is the one true God that does exist. That is the big difference here, is whether or not you have empirical evidence, like rock solid evidence to show that that God is the real God. And we're going to be getting into this a little bit more in this video.
The problem with this is It's not an argument at all. It's a neat little play on words, but when you look at it closely, it's not logical reasoning or it's not an argument for anything.
Well, no, like I said before, this isn't an argument for anything. At least not the I believe in one God less than you do. It's not an argument for or against a God. It's a demonstration on how different our worldviews are, and also a demonstration on how your belief in your God is the exact same kind of belief that other people have for these other gods. You all have the same reasons for believing in the gods, and none of them make sense to me. I get that you're talking about the logical conclusion that any one specific definition of God is probably not the correct definition of God. That's also another thing that's meant by listing off all the other different gods and how, we just go one God further, right? All these other definitions of gods have been proven not to be real, right? They've been proven and shown that they do not exist. So what makes your God special? It would seem, coming from a more rational and logical standpoint, you would take all of those other gods as an established prior probability that makes your God very unlikely to be the true God.
The idea is just that because there are many wrong answers, then all the answers have to be wrong.
No. It's not that all the answers have to be wrong. It's that, all of these other answers are wrong, so that makes this answer most likely probably not the right answer. And this is just a way to get to a logical conclusion. That doesn't mean that it definitely isn't the answer, because obviously if you have empirical evidence, if you have rock solid evidence that shows that this is the answer, then it can overcome that prior probability.
In fact, the statement implies that this one less answer is just the next step in the sequence. But hold on. If there is actually just one correct answer, then of course all the other answers would be incorrect. For instance, if a person were to say, you don't believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5, or 6, or 7, or 9, therefore 2 plus 2 doesn't have an answer. See, I just believe in one less answer than you do.
Well, you see, that's a really stupid example there, but for one thing, there's an empirical way to show that 2 plus 2 equals 4. We have mathematical proofs that can lead us to that conclusion. And those mathematical proofs are the type and quality of evidence that we would need in order to establish the answer is 4. See, this is the big difference between God and empirical things like mathematical equations and other things of that sense. The fact that we have evidence to show that 2 plus 2 equals 4. We can actually prove 2 plus 2 equals 4. You can't say the same thing for God. All you have are shitty philosophical arguments that you end up having to ignore evidence and ignore logic in order to come to the conclusion that it's your God. So no, this is a shit analogy.
I think you see the problem. If there is a singular answer, 4, then the one less statement leaves out the most important answer.
Unless you have good evidence to suggest that that answer is the correct answer. Because the whole I believe in one less God than you doesn't mean that there isn't a God. That's not an argument that's being made by that particular demonstration. But you're trying to paint it in the light of it being an argument to say that there is no God. All we're saying is that, your God probably, most likely, isn't the true definition of God. And I would say the same thing for anybody else that doesn't have any evidence and just throws a number at me for 2 plus 2 equals whatever. If somebody comes up and just says 2 plus 2 equals 24, no evidence to suggest that 2 plus 2 actually does equal 24. They just say 24. That's exactly what it sounds like to me when I hear a religious person say, God's the answer. God is the one that did it. God is the God of the Bible is the one true God. There you go. Believe it or go to hell. It's the exact same situation of just throwing out some number without any evidence to support your conclusion.
Now let's look at it from another angle. When Thomas Edison was inventing the light bulb, the story is told that he said that after trying 10,000 different filaments, he hadn't failed. He just found 10,000 things that didn't work in a light bulb. Now, suppose a person were to say, tell me why those 10,000 filaments didn't work, and I'll use the same reasoning to tell you why the one thing you say works won't. I just believe in one less filament than you.
Well, you see, that's really dumb because you can obviously demonstrate that that filament does work in a light bulb. So whatever kind of evidence that you can provide that says, nope, that filament won't work. All I have to do is put that motherfucker right in a light bulb and screw it in, turn on the electricity, and voila! It either works or it doesn't. An empirical piece of evidence that shows whether or not that filament will work in a light bulb. This is vastly different from your God, because there's no empirical evidence that you can give me that definitely shows that your God is the correct definition of God. Like I said before, all you have are these shitty philosophical arguments that suggest that a God exists and that it's specifically your God that exists. Me just saying, well, I just believe in one less God than you is not an argument against a God existing, and it's not an argument against your particular version of God existing. If you want to go the route of saying, well, all these other gods, we don't believe in, and so I also don't believe in this one God because of all these other gods. If you want to go that route, then I would say that it is just a logical conclusion. You're using the prior probability of all these other definitions of gods that men have come up with and using that to form a preliminary conclusion on your God existing, like your particular definition of God being the definition of God. There's nothing that differentiates this God from all these other gods over here. All the exact same kind of bullshit.
Well, again, I think you can see the problem. The characteristics of the filaments that don't work are obviously very different from the ones that do. Yes, it may be true that atheists believe in one less God than the God of the Bible. But the fact is, no other God is the all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good creator of life who came down to earth in human form and sacrificed himself for his human creatures simply because he chose to of his own free will.
You see, that's where you're kind of losing me here, because let's just start off with the quality of your evidence here and the quality of your definition compared to all these other gods, right? Let's start there, because you just have a book that says, oh, God has all these qualities and all of these things show that God is a true God. How does that differ from all of the other gods? All the other gods have stories, they have books, they have different things that establish their definitions, just like you have something that establishes the definition for your God, right? I'm not seeing a big difference here. All these other gods seem to essentially be of the same caliber as your God, right? All you have is a book. All they have is a book. All you guys have are opinions. Opinions are like assholes. You should know that, Kyle Butt. None of you have empirical evidence to suggest that your definition of God is the correct one. You have the same kind of evidence and quality of evidence as all of the other gods have. So it's a perfectly rational, reasonable, and logical conclusion to say that, well, your God is no different than these other gods. I don't believe in all of these other gods, so why should I believe in your God? Now, this gets into your definition of God specifically, because it doesn't make a lot of sense the way that you've described him here. What evidence do you have that this God became flesh and then died for our sins other than your holy book? You don't have anything other than your holy book to suggest that. Also, why did God have to pull some holier than thou guilt trip on all of us? I don't understand that. It seems like if your God was all powerful and omniscient and all this other shit, he would have done things a lot differently. He didn't have to come down here and sacrifice himself. He could have just, I dream a genie, blinked that shit right out of existence. He could have wiggled his nose and twinkled his dick and automatically gotten rid of sin. He could have done that easily, but he didn't. He decided to come down and guilt trip us all into sucking his dick. How does that make any kind of reasonable or rational sense? There is no reasonable or rational when it comes to the logic behind God, other than human blood magic is stronger than animal blood magic, so obviously we gotta sacrifice a human. You know, like all of the other religions at the time sacrificing humans and shit. Except this time it's gonna be our God in the form of his son, who is also God. That's magical, and he could have escaped, but he didn't. So he chose to die on the cross for reasons that he didn't really have to. He didn't have to die on the cross. At this point, it just seems like some kind of weird sex BDSM thing. And so those are my problems with the logic behind the God of the Bible.
Yes, atheists believe in one less God, but it is that God, and only that God, who truly fits all the criteria to be the singularly correct answer.
I like how circular your logic is here, because it's like this God is the only God that has all the attributes that this God says are needed in order to fulfill the fact that he is the one true God. Do you understand like the circularness of your fucking logic here? I mean, you drew a perfect circle with your logic. I mean, why should we believe what this God says is the definition of the one true God, and he just so happens to fill all of these things? Like, come on, man. You gotta realize how circular your logic is at this point, and it's just fucking ridiculous. This is not gonna convince anybody. This video was obviously made for Christians, not for atheists. Or to refute atheism or anything like that. It's meant to sell to somebody that's already bought your product so that they feel better about the product that they bought. In this case, it's the God of the Bible. I mean, nobody really wants to realize they've been tricked into sucking God dick, do they? But in any case, that's it for Kyle Butt's video today. I really appreciate everybody coming out to watch. If you will, please go down below. Let me know what you think about Kyle Butt's argument here. His very circular argument for his God being the one true God. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. And hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.